good people, and welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Beloved and Kindred. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Grace D. Gipson, Assistant Professor at Virginia Commonwealth University in the Department of African American Studies.
Hello, I'm the other co-host. I am Dr. Kenneth Robinson. I'm a visiting assistant professor in the Department of Africana Studies at the University of Pittsburgh.
All right, so we have been dying to talk about these two episodes. Every time, all the other ones are good. Episode 3 is still definitely one of our favorites, but we have been like itching and waiting to get to these two episodes to talk to you guys about them, because man, it's just it's so much. It's so in with us. We so feel it. We so love it. Yeah. What do you think?
It really connects with who we are as Black women. So, we see Black women throughout the show, like that's fine. But these two episodes really focus in on the Black woman, so it's not like, okay, we're peripheral characters. Like earlier, you may not, other than Letty, but now you really learn, or you not learn, but you see some of the issues that Black women face and they have to deal with, even though it's set in the 1950s.
Yes.
It's still like, wow, I see myself in you and Hippolyta and D. I see that.
So it's like, Black women are at the center, Black girls are at the center, and they are really showing you like, yes, we exist. We are here. You're going to listen to me. Even if you want to forget about me, you're going to listen to me and you're going to see me. So,
I'm going to take authority over my life. I'm going to take my life back. I've been giving out control, and now I'm taking my life back. Exactly. And this is what it looks like. And I do go back. It goes back to what you just said. It's about, you see agency in these two episodes. You see Black women saying, okay, we're going to speak on our issues. We want to put a name on it, and we're going to declare who we are.
Yep. So, and adding to that, so the great thing, one of the many great things about Lovecraft Country is the fact that with each episode, we've been able to kind of like get a highlight of, a particular character. So the series really does a great job of giving the characters in a way kind of like their own episode. So these next two episodes, 7 and 8, Hippolyta is in 7 and D is in 8. So we are really getting to like zoom in on them. Last time we got to talk about Ruby. We really got to showcase and highlight her. But in this episode, we get to look at Hippolyta and D. So mother-daughter duo, when you think about it too. So
yes, we did highlight Ruby. You're right. So this again goes back to that. Women are not just random characters in this show. They're driving forces. And I love how Misha Green really emphasizes that.
Absolutely.
And
yeah. And then freedom is like running thread.
Yeah, it's like, and then the question of, well, what does it mean to be free? Yep. I think we asked this question earlier in our podcast. Like, what does it mean to not, have to worry about no one looking at you? What does it mean to just be?
Right. I think we take a step further from when we were talking about Ruby of being, this Black woman interrupted.
Yes.
We're not interrupted now, because you're gonna hear me.
Yes.
You're not gonna interrupt me. You're not gonna stop me. You're not gonna get in my way. So I feel like we're transforming, or not transforming. We're progressing forward.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. What else? Oh, you mentioned this also. So it's set in the 1950s, and so we're like I said, we're really getting a chance to see Black women, how they are operating during this time period.
Mm-hmm.
And we're starting out with Hippolyta's journey, and then from there we get to see how Dee's experiences of being visible and not being visible also take place. So we're kind of seeing a double journey here between two of the main characters.
Yes.
So yeah, we're gonna take a trip today, y'all.
Yes. It's going to be exciting to go through their freedom journey with them.
Yes.
Because it really connects, like we just said, to our own freedom journey. What does it mean to just be? And it really goes to the fact that this episode, the first episode 7, is called I Am.
Yes.
Now we're going to explore that a bit more in a couple of minutes. But even when we first read the title, it's like I am. That in itself was very powerful. Who are you? I am who I am. Like, I am. It was just powerful. And we see, and again, it goes back to how we're introduced to this other side of Hippolyta, not this mother or this wife, which is great. We are now introduced to her as this discoverer, this scientist, this astronomer, this person who's interested in the sciences. We got a glimpse of it before when
at the museum in Boston.
Right, they went to the museum, and they're like, my mother discovered that, and it was beautiful. But now we really delve into, well, what does it mean for a Hippolyta to be a discoverer?
Right. And I mean, here we're having the early conversations of Black women in STEM, where we're seeing that we have always, so this isn't, although we weren't being talked about, like we were there, our presence in the field has always, existed. And so I think it's important that we even have this conversation that Black women in science has always been a thing. I mean, I think about Katherine Johnson in Hidden Figures. I think about Mae Jemison, being one of the, first, the first Black woman going into space. So these are all things that, happened because of, someone else, and everything has a purpose. Everything has a reason. So, everything connects. The dots always are connecting. So
right, that's a good point. We do need to recognize that we are in STEM, and also the reasons why we may not be in STEM as much, because we tend to be pushed away from such fields. So we got to speak of the patriarchy in that way in academia, and like, okay, maybe we want to do this, but we didn't have opportunity to do it professionally, like Hippolyta in the 50s. So yeah, it's definitely a great conversation on STEM. I'm here for it.
And it's a magical journey. It is speculative, Afrofuturistic, all of that.
Yes, and even that to me is great, because again, it goes back to how we like to look at this reimagining of this Black past, of Blackness, and it speaks to even the fact that we have to imagine it in this way because we can't see it in our way.
Right.
Where this freedom is in this other world, because in this world, freedom looks different. Or what does it mean to be free here? So let's reimagine it like, okay, now we have the world, or multiple worlds, this futuristic reimagining of this world. Now we can really see what freedom looks like.
Yep. I mean, that is why we are called, Conversation with Beloved and Kindred. Like, we're, Toni Morrison, Octavia Butler, they imagined Black women, they imagined Black girls, in the storyline, at the center, at the forefront. Yeah. And here we are, like, it's almost kind of like, look at that. Our title that we came up with, fits like very neatly with this episode. So
it really does. Like, it's perfect. Let's center the Black woman.
Yes.
All her nuance, because a Black woman is multiple. She's not just one. And acknowledging her multiplicity is the best way to understand what the Black woman experience is.
Exactly.
You're right. That's why we are Conversation with Beloved and Kindred.
So exciting. So exciting. Yeah, and so not only are we getting to, take this journey with Hippolyta, but we're also seeing how Hippolyta is trying to find some answers to what has happened over these past couple episodes, especially as it relates to George. Because she, as we've kind of said earlier, she never was quite all right with the answer that was given to her. It was kind of like, I know that's what y'all told me, but I'm not quite convinced, with that. So
we're gonna tie back to D later, because that brings up a good point about keeping information away. Like, is that your form of protection? Like, what does that mean? And not giving women all we need. So yes, thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah. So we're seeing Hippolyta's trusting her instincts. She's moving beyond her fears. And she, now that George is not there, she kind of is taking this trip, this guide trip that, we would learn that she's always wanted to do these.
Right.
But, that never happened. So here she's, having the opportunity to do that. So she's becoming she's a scientist. She's an investigative journalist, one might even say.
Yes, he is.
So,
how did you figure this out? It was just so calculated. I love how they depict her. First of all, I want to give credit to Anjanou Ellis. She is amazing. A
Yes.
fantastic actress. Fantastic. I believe her. Okay, like I believe everything she's done. First of all her films, I'm really a big fan of her. Period. But yeah.
Yeah, she nailed that. She did that, and I'm so glad that we are, like I said, really focusing in on her. She is the star
Yeah.
of this episode, regardless of everybody else that's in the episode. She is the star.
She carries it. Even her character as Hippolyta, when people, and we're going to talk about actually next in the next second, but how people kept trying to push back against her freedom.
Yep.
And she's like, George is gone. Like,
moving forward, moving on.
that's what I'm saying. Like in the other time when Atticus wanted to take over everything, and she was mad. She was like,
no, that's not what you do.
like,
No.
who are you again? Like,
I understand that you had a role, but I had a bigger role than even you did.
Right. And let's keep in mind, you still lying to me about what happened to my husband.
Yeah, so you don't really have any kind of space to do any kind of regulating around here.
Right, but thanks though.
All right, so we got Hippolyta and the Ori.
Yeah.
So we see this Ori in I want to say it's episode 3, with Holy Ghost episode when like she kind of discovers it, and it's kind of, you at that point you're not really clear as to what its significance is until Christina kind of mentions it, and then you're like, oh, this thing is a big deal.
Yes.
There's a reason.
I agree with that, because everything, first of all, in that show is a big deal. But we was like, what? It's just the solar system. What is this? But we already knew at some point by that time that she was an astronomer. So I was like, okay, she's interested in this. But so we moved on. But she stole it. Didn't she just take it?
She did. But that's okay. We're gonna let it slide on that one.
I was like, why didn't Letty know?
But they also were so focused on everything else that was very miscellaneous. That Ori was not, it wasn't money, so to speak.
Oh.
So it was kind of like, oh, if it's missing, it's missing.
It's like it was a choice for them, because Holy Ghost, like you said, was a big episode.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't everything. It was cool. It was cool.
So we see that there's a set of coordinates on the Ori, and of course Hippolyta notices that grabs her attention. She makes note of that. She writes it down, because clearly there's a significance as to why there's these numbers and this saying or quote that was on there. And we would come to find out that the coordinates bring her to Mayfield, Kansas, where she arrives at this observatory. Mm-hmm. So, but before we get there, we got to talk about before she even get out the driveway. Before she.
Oh, okay. Now, one thing I will say, even though the women are highlighted in these films, the women and the girl, because I don't want to justify D, you see the storyline still has to continue.
Yes.
So at this time, Atticus and Letty is trying to, find somebody, his cousin, whatever, right? No, whatever. And he's like, oh, we can take, what does he call the car?
Wood. They call it the car Woody.
Like, he was like, we can take Woody. He was telling Letty, like, oh, matter of fact, we can just take Woody, like it's his, first of all. Then he goes there and he sees Hippolyta drive out, like reversing, like, I'm leaving. He stops her. The audacity. So basically he kept saying, he was asking her questions, where are you going? And she's like, what? Mm-hmm. We don't have any more stops for the Green Book. Right. Mm-hmm. And she was like, mind your own business, without saying that way, but pretty much it was that. And what was the word? Is that word? Because he was starting to he was like on the car, like really trying to say, this is mine. Where are you going? And then she was like, back up. Get off the car with authority, because at that time you still see her freedom being questioned, her own autonomy being questioned, and agency being questioned by this man who feels entitled to a car that isn't even his. Yeah. If anything, it was Uncle George's, and it would have went to her. But
so it's like you said, the audacity of Tick to first off think, I'm just going to be able to just roll up here and get the car, right, and just go wherever. And then two, once you realize, okay, the car is getting ready to leave, you're questioning the fact that she's going by herself. Then you're like, okay, but there's no more guide trips, as if he thinks he knows everything that's going on. And then it's just kind of like, forcing himself. I guess he thinks, well, I'm a man.
That's
I need
it.
to protect you. It's not safe. And so, where you going? You're monitoring your every move, policing her move.
Policing her.
And so and this is where we see Hippolyta also being able to speak up for herself.
Yes, yes.
Back off.
She was like, I'm not gonna just give you the keys
At all. I felt like she probably would have ran over his foot if he
yeah.
I really do. Like, because at that point she was very, very carefree. Like, I don't care right now. I really don't.
And I love how Letty was just standing in the background, like,
yeah. And even Letty was like,
you might want to come back, Atticus, on this side. That front tire gonna take you out. So come back. But it really makes a good point. He felt confident, and he felt as though he was great enough where he should be entitled to his trip and she should not be entitled to hers. He did not explain to her really why he needed Woody.
Exactly.
He knew he could take it. And he was asking her all these questions, quizzing her, like, what are you doing? Blah, blah. No, this is her trip. She's taking authority in herself. This is the beginning of her journey. Mm-hmm. So we even see her now forming into who she is trying to be, this free Hippolyta, really taking authority over her life. And Atticus and Letty Atticus took the bus.
Yep. And even still, like, when I think about it, like, even if Hippolyta just wanted to go for a drive, like, right, she shouldn't have to ask permission to do that. Like, even if she just did, it was nothing to do with the guy trip and nothing to do with trying to figure out with George. Even if she simply just wanted to just chill, like, she doesn't need to ask permission to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, that was awesome.
So we finally get on the journey. So we're headed to where it would end up being Kansas. And as Hippolyta is, driving, she's got her packed lunch, her snacks. Because St. Louis, a couple hours away. And as she's driving, she sees from in her rear view mirror, a Black woman on a motorcycle. And so to the eye, it's just like, oh, you got this Black woman who's riding, enjoying the great summer air, ride on the street, on the highway. But she's just not any old Black woman on a motorcycle. She would be Bessie Stringfield, aka the motorcycle queen of Miami, who would be the first Black woman to ride her motorcycle across all of the connected states in the United States. And to see that, this is where we start seeing, oh, they're about to drop some knowledge now, boy. Like, it was a low key. Like, if you just saw this Black woman as simply a Black woman on a motorcycle, you would have totally missed the history lesson.
Right, you would have. Mm-hmm.
And then the fact that Hippolyta sees the joy on her face, the happiness, of her just riding, got the scarf blowing in the wind. So yeah, just a freeing moment. We see it.
It was a freeing moment. It was like, I see another Black successful woman, or I see another Black woman on her freedom journey. Yes. Like riding a bike without, a man in tow or whatever, like going by herself. And even going back to how she's just driving, she's enjoying her snacks. Like, it's just me in the road. Has she ever really felt that way? Even, because last time she had D in the car.
Right.
Now it's just her. Mm-hmm. She's like, is this what this means? I have my own snack. I'm packing for myself. Right. Now, D was upset when she was packing at first, though.
Yeah.
He was like, hey, are you going to do the checklist? Do your own checklist. Why are you going?
It's all there.
He's like, whatever, I'm going to leave. But she needed that moment for herself. And to see Betsy was like,
self-care. It really is. I just sit and think, sometimes I do want to get in my car and I just want to ride with no necessary destination. I just want to drive. That is what self-care is being able to just go without a care.
Right.
Being able to rejuvenate, to as we said, be free in that moment. So
to just be yourself.
Yeah. So So what happens after that? Dr. Robertson, tell us.
So then she shows up at the observatory, like she's like, oh, oh, look at all this. I have the key. And so then she uses this key and this thing turns on, but then a police officer shows up.
Right.
And they stop her from doing what she has to do. This interruption. We see this interruption again. She's trying to figure out what's next, but she's interrupted by 2 white police officers. And it's not like a, hey, what are you doing? Just checking in. It's very aggressive.
Right.
And she doesn't have an answer. And so, well, she tries, she tries to deal with it. But then, of course, Atticus, who finds out when he goes on his own side trip to whatever, to see cousin.
St. Louis. That's what it is. He goes to St. Louis.
Yes, he goes to St. Louis. He finds out on the phone because Letty said, what did Letty say? Oh,
Hippolyta took the Ori.
Hippolyta took the Ori. Oh my gosh, where's Hippolyta? Okay, we know where she is now. And so they went to Mayfield. Well, he went to Mayfield. And he's able to come right on time with police officers.
Right.
And he tries to help Hippolyta. So at that time, either way, things transpire. She shoots police officer and then is accidentally taken into this new world.
She's sucked into some place. We don't know, space, another planet, an extraterrestrial place. We don't know. But she got sucked in. She not in, as they said, as Dorothy said, we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. Like,
He's not in Kansas. And it's really, I like that because she went to Kansas and it's like, well, you're not there anymore.
You're not there no more. So
it was beautiful. It was a beautiful journey. And when she finally gets there, and she ends up in this place that cannot really be defined, like it's just creative, this creative space. And she sees this black goddess with this big afro.
Before that, though, she's greeted by these kind of 2 figures that we don't know if they're human or not human, that kind of guide her to that place where she ends up meeting.
Yes. That goddess with the afro and it was first of all, the afro was on point. I don't know how that happens, but I mean, it's really cute. But my thing is when she got, not my thing is when she got there, she asked that lady, who are you?
Right.
And she said, I am.
And it was like, oh, okay, I got you. Yep.
We see you. And she was like, but who are you?
She said it with conviction, like there was no hesitation, there was no doubt. It was like, I am. And you're like, you are. That's how I would have responded. You are.
Right. I followed point and be like, all right.
Yep.
And she was like, am I in, wait, I think you mentioned it before about her being Beyonce, like.
Yeah, so in the credits, this tall, beautiful black goddess, in the credits, her name is listed as Beyond Say, and say as in French, so C''EST, and then it's beyond as in going beyond the limit. So, clearly there is some play on Beyonce here for all our Beyonce fans out there. That was probably intentional from the writers there, but it was unique. I like it. That was creative.
It was creative.
Yeah. So, and when you translate that, say is like it is in French. So
right.
And it's like, I like that. That works. It
works. And even I think it's on one of Beyonce's earlier albums where she made a play on her name where she's like, it's beyond what I can say.
Right.
And so it really speaks to the whole thing. I am. You can't define me. I am who I am. And I'm beyond what it is. Like I'm beyond what is established. I'm beyond these confines of what you think a woman should be or what you think a person should be. I am. I am. So yeah.
So then, like you said, you were mentioning, Hippolyta is like trying to figure out where am I? What's going on? What was because the Beyonce or this goddess, as we can refer to as, is speaking kind of some kind of code. Some kind of language that we're not sure what it is, but she clearly does tell her, you are not in prison.
Right.
So there's no need, because you could see on Hippolyta's face, there's kind of like, where am I? Like, why am I here? Like trying to escape,
Right.
her face. This like I feel like I'm trapped here, and she's like, "Oh no,
you're not in prison."
no,
And literally asking the questions like, "Who are you?
mhm,
Where do you want to be? Where you? What was it? Who are you? Where do you want to be? Name yourself."
name yourself."
You're in the only prison that you see is the one you have created for yourself. And so that's why you think you're in prison,
Yeah.
because you're confined to Hippolyta Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
All I'm saying is, who are you? Where you want to be? Name yourself. And so until you do that, you're going to feel as though you're in prison.
Yep.
Because you're used to it.
This episode was a sermon, y'all. Let me tell you, we just going through the scripture right here now.
I mean, it was like, define yourself, name yourself. And it really speaks to it's so many things it speaks to. I mean, we're gonna talk about it a little bit later.
Yeah.
But this whole idea, where do you want to be? And again, this whole Hippolyta journey from the beginning of Lovecraft, she has always been George's wife.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, what do you mean where I want to be?
Yeah.
I can have goals for myself. What are you talking about? I don't even know why are you asking me these questions that I've never been asked before?
And it's interesting because these are the conversations we have now with ourselves. These
Yeah.
are the questions that we do ask ourselves. These are the things that we tell ourselves, like, name yourself. Who do you want to be like? I mean, I know every day I'm asking, who are we going to be today, Grace? What you want to do today?
Exactly.
Like, these are important questions that need to be and have to be asked regularly to make sure that we are normalizing that mentality, that
Yeah.
thinking,
Mhm.
because otherwise we'll be trapped, we'll be stuck, we'll be, thinking that we're in prison when
Right.
we're really not,
Right. We'll be too busy trying to live up to what people think we should be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We get ourselves in this process to the point where we have normalized being in prison.
Yep. So Hippolyta said, the goddess says, so where you want to go? And Hippolyta's like, I want to dance with Josephine Baker.
Now, this was after a couple of struggles.
Yeah, there was a couple of struggles there.
She had to look a little crazy for a minute. She had to go play with the puzzle, which didn't mean much later. Yeah. But I love how okay, can we just talk about real quick how she tore off the arms?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah.
Because she had to wrap her wrist from, that what she had done. Yeah. So she's already being, creative, like, let me take this off because I need to wrap this up so that I'm not just, looking a mess out here. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It was nice. It was nice. And so she did. You're right. She said, I want to dance with Josephine Baker. Right. And it was really crazy. It took her a minute of really being with herself and going. I don't know what that thing was where she was putting the pieces out.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that was either. Yes.
It's just something that's there. But it took her a moment to be with herself to be like, okay, let me stop.
Right.
Where do I want to go? I want to dance with Josephine Baker.
Yep. And it was, so you see the coordinates, in space as she's traveling to the destination. So we're literally on the journey with her. We're traveling with her. We headed to Paris, France. We about to go see Josephine Baker.
Yes.
Not just see her, but dance with her.
Dance with her.
Yeah.
And you could tell at first, because again, she's new to freedom.
Yeah.
So when she first get on the stage, she's kind of like discombobulated. And at one point, the dancers take off their tops, and she's like,
"Whoa,
what are these dancers? Who am I in this space?"
Right.
Because yeah, she still doesn't truly know who she is. She just knows where she wants to go. And then she encounters or she speaks to Josephine Baker, and she was like, let loose.
Right.
And then that's when she started to get used to the dances and enjoy herself. Oh, it was great.
And so this instance reminds me of past episodes with Montrose and Ruby, where like she's finally finding her place of peace. So we see when Montrose is with Sammy in the previous, episodes, and like in that jazz center out on, in a Cabrini Green area. Mm-hmm. And he's finally like feeling like I can be who I am and be at peace with that and be free to not have to be shamed or feel like someone is watching me or gonna, question me, and then with Ruby, although it's a unique set of peace, her going to the north side and taking this potion, it's still a level of peace that she has found, this freedom that she's found. So we're seeing now Hippolyta is kind of getting an opportunity to have that peace herself. She gets to experience that as well. And she's able to kind of have this dialogue with Josephine Baker. And I'm just sitting thinking like, man, like, what would that be like to go back in time to meet with one of your icons and have a conversation about your life and how you want to be better and do better and
Yes.
them telling you what what you need to do.
It was just amazing because she was like, look at why I left.
Yeah.
Like, you are not truly who you need to be when you're there because you're stifled by so much racism and sexism. Not saying that there was none in France. She
Right.
just had a certain level of freedom
Yeah.
there that she could not enjoy here. And I think one of the things she said was, I see what I was robbed of back there. I thought I had everything I ever wanted, but I was just the Negro woman that white folks wanted me to be. And that, oh wait, this is actually Hippolyta. They found a smart way to lynch me without me noticing the news.
Yeah.
And so even in that situation, it's about normalizing this sexism and this racism. We've got so used to it that's like, oh, it is what it is. We always say it is what it is.
Yeah.
And that's the problem because it doesn't have to be.
Right.
What we always said is, and we have normalized it, like, okay, we've gotten used to being lynched without even noticing the news.
Yep. It's almost like we put the noose on ourselves sometimes.
Right. That's the thing. That's the insidious aspect of racism, where it has become so normalized and ordinary in our society that sometimes we don't even know that we are supporting it.
Exactly.
In nuanced ways. So when she said that, it really speaks to, now again, you got to talk about us in the intersections of being Black and women,
right,
and being in France, and like how she's able to truly just be herself, and in her freedom she's able to acknowledge the issues that she was dealing with. She didn't put a name on that until she became free. So she had to step outside of this ordinariness of racism and sexism and see that, oh my gosh, I just normalized everything. Also, I would say Atticus helped with that at that car.
He did.
He did.
He good for some things. He good for a few things.
A little bit. Like,
so
okay.
We see that Hippolyta, in this kind of like aha moment.
Yes.
She realized how she was angry with herself.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was the obvious that she's angry with white people. Like we all know that. Like that's evident. Very reminiscent of Ruby's feelings, like how she was angry with white people and herself.
Right.
Then kind of had that come to Jesus moment, like, hey, I was holding myself back,
Yes.
and I had them holding me back, but I can't control really them, but I can control me.
Right.
How I make sure that I do right, that I'm better.
Yes.
Having these dialogues with ourselves, like you gotta talk to yourself sometime and tell yourself, like, look now, all right, now this is the place that you were in,
right,
this is the place that you have to stay in, and
she said it. She's like, I hate me for letting them make me feel so small. I hate, and it's like,
yep, it's that just, all of this, like I said, this is just a really powerful episode for Black women to really feel themselves in. I mean, we can't stress that enough, just how important it is to see yourself transform and really, see yourself for who you are and do something about it and make that change so that you're not staying stagnant. One thing that people always tell me is that you don't want to ever be stagnant in what you do. You're always wanting to be moving, taking the next step. Even if it's a small step, it's still taking, the next step to wherever it is that, your journey is going to take you.
Right. That was good. It is important not to be stagnant. It's important not to become so complacent with society we allow it to continue to confine us.
Mm-hmm. And in that moment, we also see like some of the dancers, what they made this statement about, why do we always have these American girls, come and messing things up? And, you definitely, that was some shade, being thrown on the US, rightfully so though. And this, in that moment, I felt like, okay, they're describing America as this tense place.
Mm-hmm.
Because, Hippolyta was kind of like tense and, like,
right.
Relax. I remember it just made me think about when I'm always with my mom and she's always like, I'd be like, relax, mom. relax, just be easy,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know. And
Exactly.
so that tense that we see, even traveling over to France, and this idea of there's a level of freedom that people get when they leave the US. And
Yeah.
we've seen that through many artists who
Yeah.
left. Nina Simone, James Baldwin,
Mhm.
several folks who were like, I got to go.
Like,
I,
I just need to experience freedom for a couple of minutes. I need to get out of, because again, it's not saying that racism did not exist around the world. We know that every place that colonialism touched, racism exists.
yeah,
But it was still an avenue outside the U.S. because the U.S. had a stricter form of racism in the
right.
social hierarchy. And so for them to leave, it was like, okay, I just need a moment. And this tenseness is real, where we're always feel like, I think that contributes even to go right into imposter syndrome.
Yes.
How we don't even feel like, okay, can we do this? Oh, that's too much. I'm not good enough for that. Or I'm not going to take that leap because I'm not going to take that leap. I'm just going to stay right here. This is comfortable for me.
Right.
We tend to stay in this box. We tend to say, okay, we're going to be this way, or I'm not going to be too much black or too black.
Right.
I'm not going to act too much like my culture because that'll be problematic in this circle.
Right.
So we're doing too much sometimes, and we're like, okay, maybe we should step back. We don't need to relax too much. We're always performing. We're always code switching.
Yes.
What does that mean when you go to France and you see how Hippolyta went over there and she's like, I can't dance this way, or I can't take off my top. I can't. Look, she's almost naked, you guys. What are we supposed to do?
Right.
She does not know what that freedom is because we're so used to confining who we are.
Right. Or what someone else tells us that we should be.
Or what someone else, yes, what they tell us we should be.
Mhm.
And again, sometimes it takes us leaving to see that I don't want to be that way.
Right. Right. And I don't have to be that way either.
Right.
Ooh. Oh, and can't forget that we also get an appearance from Frida Kahlo in that scene where they're talking with Josephine Baker and Hippolyta having that moment. So we got a lot of folks, a lot of key figures, popping in there. So like I said, it's a history lesson, in each moment, in each journey, and so we
Right.
got two people, and in that one.
And because even if we speak of Frida Kahlo and her work and her impactful work, it was
Yes.
like, this is excellent. This is what freedom looks like in the 1950s. I would ask you, what type of freedom do you see for Black women now? Like, they went to Paris, France, and they went to see Josephine Baker dance, and we see Frida Kahlo there as well. What spaces can we acknowledge even today? Like, one thing I will say, oh my gosh, you know the festival that comes.
Oh, with Essence?
No, that's great actually. The other one is Afrofuturism. It's the festival, the event that goes around the world.
Afro punk. Yes.
Afropunk. Yes. Yes, yes.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah. That's an excellent one.
Mhm.
Excellent. I think that embodies everything of what we've talked about in this episode. And the fact that it goes international.
Yeah.
South Africa, Paris, London, and it's in the US with New York and Atlanta. Like, yeah, oh my God, yeah. That's perfect. That's a perfect example.
Because it's like, it's a place where, Black people could just be.
Yeah.
You can dress the way you want to. You can be yourself without having to perform. And everyone appreciates you for that.
Right.
So you can see now Black people creating pockets or events where we could just be. And of course, we have other areas, but this is a well-known global type of event and organization. Is Afropunk like it's a business organization?
It's a movement. It's an organization. It's a film. There's a documentary film of the same name that's surrounded by. So yeah, it's a movement. That's just we can say that, and that encompasses everything.
Yes, it's a movement. It's a movement of freedom, of this reimagining of Blackness, or coming back to who we are, and providing healing in these circles. It's just a way of, okay, well, where can I go to? I want to dress like this. I want to have color in my hair without being deemed too ghetto. I want to speak a certain way. I want to act a certain way. So that's an example of like a current day Josephine Baker type event.
Yeah, I would even say, obviously Essence Festival. I would
Yes.
also say this organization called Girl Trek.
Yes.
I would. What else? What is something else that is come? There's so many different retreats. Even if you want to get socially in Black Girls Wine,
Yes.
there's so many spaces that Black women specifically have created
Mhm.
for to say we are here and we want to enjoy the joys of life. We talk about this all the time. There's trauma. We know we're going to experience trauma. We know we're going to experience pain and oppression, but we should be able to experience joy and happiness too.
Right.
On a regular basis. So
Exactly. And I even love how Black women have used social media in these ways.
yes, yeah,
Like, you have Black girls therapy on Instagram. You have well-read Black girls. It's so many different spaces where it's like, oh, you're going to see us today.
yep, and every day.
And every day. And every day. So congratulations. We were done.
So then we transition. We leave Paris and we go back, as I like to call it, we go back home.
After she declares herself as Hippolyta.
Yes.
Once she says, I am Hippolyta, and she says that, then she goes to the next place.
So, and I said, I like to call it home because it is home. It is, where civilization began. It is, as many call Mama Africa, however you want to call it. It is home. And,
Yeah.
So we go to where we meet with a group of the Dahomey Amazon warriors, the Dahomey women, where we have saw a taste of them. If for everybody that's seen, because everybody's seen the Black Panther.
Yes.
The Dora Milaje, essentially, kind of like an example of the Dahomey women. So we get to see now them in their full element of the Dahomey women. And I definitely would recommend, doing a little research on them and how these were a group of women who were running things.
Yes. Yes.
Who were, they were basically in charge of it all. People looked to them to make sure that they got protection, to make sure that countries, kingdoms were, were sealed and that nobody could infiltrate in. Mm-hmm. So this was a group of bad women right here.
They were well trained. Weren't they known for like decapitation?
Yes. So they weren't no punks. They weren't. These wasn't no little. Oh, we're just here. You don't mess with them at all. Yeah. And they were trained very young. So you had young girls who became women warriors.
Yes. Yes. Because normally when we see this, even when we think about, I guess, we think about Black Panther and how, what was the Dora Milaje, this is your work, and how they they represent the home. It's your time. So, and also, when you typically see warriors, you think of men. And like men being raised, especially white men, like in the movie 300 and things like that, who's usually depicted in the films. But it's really good to see women warriors and even how they help Hippolyta become a better person. Like, go back to yourself. You're stronger than this. You're stronger than this.
And there's a line where I guess we can call it kind of like the leader of in this at the time, or kind of like a chief. Well, she wasn't a chief because there was a chief that was there. So I guess you can kind of make like a lieutenant, a sergeant, or some kind of a leader in this moment here, tells her, I cannot tell you what true freedom is. You have to find out yourself. But right now, you are too afraid to go looking. Woo! Sometimes you just have to have somebody just call it out.
Yes. That's how control works. Social control works, where you're like, I don't even know how to look for freedom because I'm so comfortable here. And it goes back to that tense feeling that she had in Paris.
Yep.
It's like, be free. Actually, that's what it was. She went to there and then she went back to Paris and she found out she was Hippolyta.
Right.
But it was a very important moment because, again, it does speak to sometimes how we can find ourselves. And they were like, if I make this step, I'm not gonna make the step. I'm just gonna stay right here in this role in this way. And it was very moving. Even she says, at one point, they told you were free, but you were only free to do their bidding.
Yep.
So, That's that line was like, you were only free to do their bidding. So when you try to, you can be free to do their work,
right? Mm-hmm.
but not when you need to be yourself. That's not your role, but that's how control works. You think you're free when in fact you're not.
Yeah.
You're just freely doing what they want you to do.
And when she finally embodies it, recognizes it, acknowledges it, and then she takes the crown and puts it on, on her head, and realizes, because then it was like, what are you gonna do with this anger?
Right.
What do with this? How are you going to use this? And when those soldiers, Confederate soldiers, come for them, and they just take them out
quickly. Because it was just like and there was no woman who died.
Not at all.
No one was killed at that time. I mean, they had more soldiers coming, but we didn't get there. But no one was killed in the first group to come toward them. No woman. And it really speaks to, again, the strength of a woman. And she realized, she was like, if I can defeat them, I can defeat anything. Yeah. I am Hippolyta.
And one thing that I have to stress on this too is, so there's already all these tropes and stereotypes, that are placed on Black women. Everything from the Jezebel, to the mammy, to the angry Black woman, and we even see here how they could have, another writer could have really took a turn with the anger piece.
Yes.
And it could have really made it look not good. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, I tell my students, there's this angry Black woman stereotype. And I say, but guess what? Sometimes we got a right to be angry. There's a
right to be angry.
like there's nothing wrong with being angry, because it's a true feeling, a true emotion.
Right. So, exactly.
Yeah. So it for me, I felt like they didn't endorse the trope. They didn't, make it seem like it was this bad thing. Or
right.
Right. Ashamed of your anger. No, what you gonna do with the anger?
And again, we gotta understand, we get why you're angry.
Exactly.
So it's like we acknowledge your anger and we understand how you become angry. Yep. But now what? So yeah.
As they said, what you gonna do about it? So yes. So we've seen a range of emotions. So we see like kind of like this anger. We see the emotion of like, okay, I'm trying to figure things out. And then we see a vulnerable emotion.
Yes.
With Hippolyta, and when she gets with George. I remember we were watching this and we were like, so George is still alive?
I was so excited. No, he's not.
But for this moment, we're gonna take it. We're gonna roll with it. So
yeah, I guess so. It was cool. It was nice to see him. I mean, because I love Courtney B. Vance. I just love him as an actor. And I didn't want to see him leave so early. So it was good to see him back. Yeah. So fine.
So Hippolyta gets to be with George again. And here it's like, I am Hippolyta, George's wife. Mm-hmm. And
he makes a statement like, yes, you are my wife. You still, consider yourself my wife. And then because they were laying down at first, then she gets up like, you tried to shrink me. You're like, wait. Mm-hmm. Then he talks himself.
We got to acknowledge the Black love, the tenderness of showing Black love, the, seeing this partnership and just like, you're just like, oh God, they're in love. It's so sweet. And you're like, yes, because oftentimes we don't get to see the tender side of Black love. We don't, it's either rough, and yeah, maybe it's rough and it's hard, but we don't often get layers of Black love. It's only very one-dimensional. And so here we're able to see another side of partnership.
Yes, I agree with that, because it was good to see them, like they're reuniting, and she still loves him. That it never took that away. It's just, when you think relationships are complex.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean the love is going, it just means the relationship is complex.
Right.
Yes.
We, this is where you ask the question, what does it mean to have equal partnership?
Yeah.
What does that really mean? And how do we obtain that? How do we work towards that?
Right. But then it goes back to the importance of naming in this moment. Yes. Where he's like, you're still, George, you're still my wife. And she's like, I'm Hippolyta. And then the whole conversation about shrinking, that was like, I absolutely adored it because it was this whole idea of, she was like, I was a discoverer, I was a scientist, I was all these things, but then I had to be your wife.
Right. Which shrunk me.
It struck me. It really struck me. He was like, no, wait. I always knew you were a discoverer. And to me, that is.
But you didn't push it.
No, you were free to do your bidding. So that's the thing with her. She was a discoverer, but she could not be a discoverer under George because he had the what book is it called? Not the Green Book, but the
travel guide or the
travel guide. We just say the travel guide. He was doing the travel guide. She had to support him, and she had to shrink to fit under his dream. And he even realized that. He was like, I did shrink you.
Yep. He aided in that.
Yeah, he had to. Not that he had to, but the fact that, and I guess it's again, it's not his fault. I'm not saying he's a bad person. Right. He's supposed to be Vance. He's a good actor. I don't think that has anything to do with his character, but I just like Vance. Anyway, so, but it's the fact of, you saw a discoverer in her, and you hid that.
Yep.
Because you needed her to help you with this Green Book, even after you died. You needed her to continue the Green Book under Atticus.
Right.
Right. But that's what it was. And then he says, after they had this conversation, he was like, Hippolyta Freeman, the discoverer. And she just says Hippolyta, the discoverer. Right. Because even in that name, the fact that she did not say Freeman, and again, it's not saying that she's taking away the love. She's just recognizing, I am Hippolyta. Like, I was Hippolyta the discoverer before I met you. Exactly. And I'm going back to being Hippolyta the discoverer.
And we can't assume that others will make us big. Like, even in life, you can't assume that, as much as, yes, we find support, we have support, we know that there are people who look out for us, but you can never assume that people are going to be there to make you big. Like, you can't. You have to really do that for yourself. And when others do contribute to that, it's a bonus, but it's just the idea of, you can't assume that others are going to do that for you.
Right.
Because otherwise you'll be like Hippolyta, constantly shrinking until you finally wake up and realize, wait a minute. So y'all not really putting nothing into this process with me. Oh, I see.
And it goes back to, if George didn't die, then we would not have known this.
Right. Which is really kind of an interesting moment of like, so did we have to see the death for her to wake up?
Exactly. And that was the sad part. That was the sad part about it, where it was like, we did have to see the death before all this could happen. Like, and I love George, but he had to get out the way for Hippolyta to be who she had to be for herself.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
So in Hippolyta's journey, I don't want to say it ends, but it more so, this chapter is coming to a close.
Yes.
And now we're at a point where Hippolyta has to make the decision of, do I return back to Chicago, to my family, or do I stay and continue discovering who I am, and adding more to the I am? And so we see that as she's floating through space, in this kind of reminiscent of Orinthia Blue, Dee's character that she draws, we hear the speech from Sun Ra.
Yes.
The place. So
I want to go back to that 1 minute, because even then you see how George is following her down the stairs.
Yeah.
He's not guiding as he usually is. He's in the front. He's following her into this new world. But yes, Sun Ra, he did.
So she's leading. She's taking the lead, with grace and with elegance and with joy and happiness. I mean, you could tell that she is in her element, as they say.
Yes.
She was free, finally free, and she was taking advantage of doing that. So yeah.
And it speaks to in Lovecraft Country. Let's go back to Lovecraft Country, the book itself. We're going to speak on that a little bit later. In the book Lovecraft Country, which is there, it's there. You got it right there. when we hear about her going to this other world,
Right.
we speak of the people who have been imprisoned in this other world.
Mm-hmm.
So the author, because the author of Lovecraft Country, he depicted this world where someone confined three people, right? Lovecraft Country, yeah, confined three people to prison, like to be imprisoned in this other world. Even speaking to again at the beginning when Hippolyta was like, "Oh, I'm in prison."
Right.
It kind of speaks to the book because that's is exactly where they were in this other world. They were in prison, and
Yep.
so even at the end, the first two died, but the black woman who was left there,
Right.
she was in prison.
Mm-hmm.
She did not want to leave. And
Mm-hmm.
so to see how this depiction of the other world for Hippolyta was freedom is very interesting because again, it goes back, who's telling our story?
Right. Right.
Who's
So,
depicting our story? So
all
yeah.
so as we mentioned, yes, this was about Hippolyta, this episode, but the other characters, they were functioning, and having and moving on and their storyline. So, it's important that we definitely got to recognize that as even as Hippolyta, we're learning about her, we see the other characters, you know,
Right, right.
we see Atticus traveling to St. Louis to get answers about the Book of Names
Yes.
with his cousin's friend, his cousin Ethel, who is no longer living, her friend Bertie, and Tick realizing he got the same birthmark. Like, oh wait, she got that. I got that too. So we're starting to see some more questions,
And
getting answered.
we see spirituality in that because she's the only reason she knew his cousin Ethel, or yeah, his cousin Ethel, is because of the fact that their husbands were deacons at the same church. And it's like, oh, this is what we do. This is how we know each other. The church has always been a part of our community in this way, a connection,
Yes, always. What else we see? We see, this unique triangle between Ruby, William, Christina. I even liken it to a queer, a queer reading of this,
Yeah,
relationship that's happening between them. So,
it
but
is.
some manipulation. That's what we're also starting to see that kind of like seeping through. Um, what else? What else?
Um, the reconciliation.
Yes, and struggle.
Yes, that was very interesting to see that sort of reconciliation.
Mhm.
And you also at that moment in their conversation, you see a change in Ruby
Yeah,
and you see a change in Letty because at this point we know that Letty is with child,
right, right.
and so or we know we have this idea that is she pregnant? Is she pregnant? What's wrong with her?
Yeah, something's different.
Right. Hmm. And
Something.
so you hear this conversation. It's like, oh, well, maybe you are not like your mother.
Hmm.
And it was like, okay, we really see the beginning of what could possibly become a good sisterhood at this point.
Right, right. But at the same time, they're still holding back. They're still not able to fully, you
Right.
know, engage with each other, which is going to really begin to become more apparent, as we get ready to, these next couple of episodes, these final episodes that we're approaching. So, um, we also see some tense moments, more tense moments. Let me not just say
I'm about to say because they laugh additional tense moments.
between Atticus and Montrose. With lack of communication, we're still seeing the complexities of masculinity being on display. We're still seeing Montrose concerned about his perception. So we just left from Montrose feeling free about who he is.
In
And
that space. In that space. He was free in that space. But then he had to come home.
yep,
So again, it really talks about how sometimes people operate in spaces because the world isn't free, certain
right.
spaces are. And so in that space, he was free. This club that he was at, and then he came home, he wakes up and realized,
Like, so you still here.
like, I'm cooking breakfast.
Right. Well, what it's yeah. We've all either know or heard that moment or know that feeling of
Yeah,
like, you still here? Like, um What you
Like,
doing?
freedom is gone. I'm back. Like you've been free, so you don't understand it because you didn't. You know, you are who you are. But and then when he left and he saw Atticus,
Yeah. Because Sam is very much like, I'm who I am.
right? He has already. He's like I am, but you know, Montrose is still trying to figure out his relationship with Atticus. I think that is confining him. It's
Mhm.
the secrets.
Yeah. So there's a lot that happens. I am. Who are you? What are you? Like I said, it's a sermon, boy. It's a sermon, y'all.
It really is. It really
Scripture.
is.
They were dropping knowledge. They were dropping knowledge in that episode.
And the thing is, we've been talking, and it's only been one episode because it made such an impact on us
Yeah.
as Black women and what that means. You know, to be a Black woman in this world where you know we're confined to certain areas,
Right.
and we are at this point. And I will say now, we see Black women. All of us are trying to get out of these roles that were created for us.
Right.
We are kind of doing the bidding of others.
Exactly.
So yeah, there has definitely been a change in that.
And in that, we still have to remember that not only are Black women going through the
Yeah.
struggle, but Black girls are definitely, and even more so, we cannot forget their existence. We cannot forget who they are because they will eventually become the women that ask the question of, who are you? What are you going to do? And this eventually become the I am. So
Yeah.
we have to nurture those who come after us because it's not like we're just one set of people.
Right.
The children, the babies, they come after,
Because
and
if
make
we
sure.
don't nurture them, then they'll be having the same questions at a later age as we did. It's
Mhm.
like we at this point we know more.
Yep.
Don't silence the kids. Childhood agency is key.
Yep. So we are transitioning from adults
Yes.
with trauma and the terror society to children
Yes.
in Jig-a-Bobo episode 8. So we're now we focusing on spotlights on D now.
Yes. Now, Dee has been playing a critical role throughout this entire series, but now it's like you've been important, but no one saw you. It's like the how should you say? I'm not trying to kin it to it, but you know, some women like I love to be in the background. I don't like to be in the foreground. Even though the women are the driving forces, they're usually in the background. Now it's like, okay, Dee, thank you so much for helping George and all the people go to where they need to go because you made sure they were packed. Thank you for writing the future
Yes.
of everyone in your was the Winthia Blue.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, who are you?
Right.
Tell us about who you are. Yeah.
Tell us who you are now. We want to listen. We want to listen. Now, maybe
Yeah.
maybe your family wasn't, but we
They
want
were
to.
trying to listen. They were not. They were done. But we are here for you. So tell us who you are. And I'm really excited about this episode because we really see how it's exciting and it's really sad. It's extremely sad because we open up to the song "Cruel Summer." I do think we know what was it by what was it Bananarama? Cruel Summer, right? And you see two worlds. You have like this white world, what's going on. You have Black people standing at this funeral, and it's Bobo's funeral.
Yep.
And Bobo, as we talked about before, during Holy Ghost, is her friend.
Yep. Her best friend. Yeah.
Her best friend. Bobo is from Chicago. And you know, we can definitely talk of Bobo as being representative of Emmett Till.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
He is Emmett Till. And in that scene, the beginning of the scene, she smells something. She's like, what is that smell? And then Ruby say, well, you know it's hot. It's a hot summer day.
It's a hot Chicago summer day. And as someone who has experienced a hot summer Chicago day, it's no joke. And I'm gonna just say, I had a luxury of spending it when AC exists. This is 1950s. There is no AC. And what fans are there are few and far between. So we're talking about the dog days of summer going on right here in the midst of a funeral.
Right, in the midst of a funeral.
Yeah.
And we know that it was open casket, the Emmett Till. was open casket. So you can see how the heat could have, you know, if Bobo's were open casket, you can see how it may have affected the smell of it. And even in that moment where you see she's seeing her friend being buried, she sees how people are interacting with her or interacting period without her, and she smells it. You can see how this racial terror is affecting all of her senses.
Yes, heightened.
It's heightened sense of all this thing that's going on. It's her friend, and she doesn't know how to deal with it. And at the same time, who's talking to her?
Her family doesn't know how to deal with her. Like, you know, it's, you know, her best friend just died, and they're concerned about George. They're concerned about Ruby is concerned about this potion. Letty is concerned about something else.
Yeah.
But nobody's thinking about that Dee just lost her best friend.
Exactly.
And how brutal it was. It wasn't like he died of being sick, like he was murdered.
He was murdered.
So, you know, this is what we think about Black children and death, and how we have to deal with it. How do we deal with that? You know, she's trying to process her friend's murder, the loss of her father. Her mother is missing.
It's missing, and no one has told her yet what's going on with her mother. So she's like, no one who is around me who sees me. Who I'm dealing with so much, but yet in the need to try to protect me, you don't talk to me.
You don't tell me anything.
You don't tell me anything.
And I mean, we see that. I remember when I was a kid, how, you know, when a family member passed away, you know, it was this decision of, okay, is she gonna come to the funeral? Is somebody gonna stay at home with her? And you're like thinking, wait a minute, like, why don't you know? And to this day, you know, I know it affected me because I never went to a funeral, because my family shielded and protected me from that. And it was because they said that was not a place for children to be.
Right.
So much so now that as an adult, I don't do funerals. So that, you know, that impacted me into adulthood, to where it's like, nope, you're not doing that. And, you know, I've been to one, and that was because I had to go to that one. That was my grandmother, and I was not going to miss that. But just this idea of protecting children from death.
Yeah.
And it's inevitable. Like, death is going to happen.
Exactly.
We can't exclude you from that.
Yeah, the thing is, it is important, because I remember not going to funerals when I was younger. After a while, I was like, okay, they need to know, because people will be missing in your life.
Yep.
Like, I didn't even know they were sick.
Right.
They were just gone. And what does that missing mean? And so when you finally realize, if you do realize someone died and you don't go to the funeral, you don't go to the hospital, you don't go to anything, and you're young, you're pushed to the side, but no one ever has that conversation with you like, hey, we don't want you to see death, but, you know, this person may have died because of this. We didn't want you to go to the funeral. There has been no conversation, but in doing that, you take away a child's feelings and their own agency on how they should deal with their feelings.
Right.
And you're really rendering them invisible in these conversations, in this process where you're grieving, but the child has to sit here and question what's going on.
Right. It's, you know, like, I understand that many things transpire, you know, at a funeral. You know, it's a hard conversation to have, but it becomes harder when you don't have that conversation then, because it will come back, it will resurface, and then there's more questions. And so it's kind of like you have to take it head on, you know, dealing with loss. And,
Right.
you know, and yes, there's appropriate ways to do it. Like, you know, you just don't just like, this is what happened, they're dead, you know, but you do have to have the dialogue, you know, palatable for a child to understand.
Exactly. I absolutely agree with that. And oh, sorry.
No,
I was like, because it is important. And when you brought it up, I was like, I remember not going to a funeral, but they were just gone, and I didn't get my goodbyes.
Right.
It's almost as though I had to forget them because no one engaged with me about them until I was older. And it's like, yeah, they did die. I just didn't see them anymore. What does that mean? And how traumatizing can they actually be to someone? So yeah.
we also see the at least the black side of town, south side, the way in which they also react. So you know, when Dee walks off, because clearly nobody is noticing that she is there, you know, she walks off, and as she's walking off, we see how a lot of black businesses, they're closed out of respect for Emmett Till. And
Yes.
you see how when a community comes together, like, you know what, nope, today we're resting.
Yeah.
Today, in honor and respect of him, we're not going to.
Right. Right.
And how, you know, that's deep. That's a message right there. You know, letting the community know we see you, we are here for you, we
Mm,
support you. Letting the family know we're here, and we want to make sure that you know that. And
right.
so, yeah,
That is important. And you brought up even in that, like they recognize Emmett Till or Bobo's death.
yep, yep.
And then, we go back to, well, again, how is Dee feeling?
Hmm.
Everyone is talking about Dee. Oh, we need to protect her. Oh, we need to make sure her life is good. Oh, we need to, make sure she doesn't get exposed to so much. Dee ran away while y'all were talking about Dee.
It's funny. It's like you're having a conversation without her there.
How you know, it's that conversation you always say, like, how you talking about me and I'm here?
Right, right, right.
Like, and Dee say, you know what, since y'all not talking to me, I'm going to escape. She didn't even run away. She kind of walked away a little bit.
Yeah, it was. It was so casual. It was so, and see, that lets you know right there. If she could just easily walk away like that.
Who was seeing her?
I mean, it was so easy. It was so easy.
It was
Um,
so easy for them to just like not. No one was looking at her to be unseen.
mhm,
Even though she wasn't trying to be quiet. She was asking questions.
mhm.
She was like, "What's that smell?" Engaging in her own way. But she was a child that you were trying to protect, but you weren't engaging the child. So how are you protecting someone you don't see?
Right.
And then after a while, after they had questions about water and drinking water and all the stuff they were doing, then it was like, "Where's Dee?" Dee's been gone for almost half the episode by the time you figured out what was going on. Like Dee is gone.
Like, bye bye. You know.
Hey,
So this speaks to the invisibility. Uh,
yes,
you know, not just black children, but black girls. You know,
yes,
the invisibility of them, and how oftentimes black boys are centered on. There's
yes.
special attention given, but black girls are very much like, you're not here, you don't exist, or if you do, they're criminalized. So I'm reminded of Ruth Nicole Brown's work, Monique Morris's work,
Mm-hmm.
of how black girls are adultified, made to be, adults before their time.
Mm-hmm.
They're made to be seen in a particular light, that we don't need to give them the same attention that everybody else receives, and that their existence is not relevant.
It really speaks to even this interplay between Bobo's death and her life,
Hmm.
where
Hmm.
everything shut down for Bobo,
Yeah,
but no one paid attention to her life.
exactly.
She's going through these areas, and there's no one there to see her.
Right. Hmm.
And it's interesting again, this interplay between death, and of course that death is very important. But what about the lives of black women? And it really speaks to even now why we had hashtag, I think Kimberly Crenshaw, as well as the African American Policy Forum, created the hashtag say her name.
Yeah.
Because we were forgetting even not only black girls, but black women in this conversation on police brutality.
Hmm.
Like, I know we need to be mindful of, you hear this conversation. I have sons, but what if you have daughters? What if you have gender fluid children?
Hmm.
What about other people other than your sons? We have to change that rhetoric. We have to change that conversation even now. And I mean, I know we're talking about Lovecraft, but we tend to only speak of, oh, someone has been killed by police brutality, and then usually, let's say it's a man. Oh, I'm not. What am I going to tell my son?
Right. And I mean, we had a prime example happen this past summer with Breonna Taylor.
Yes.
That was an incident that happened actually in February of last year, but it didn't get the big brouhaha like everyone else till later. And it's like, we can't forget, like, this actually happened before all of these other events. And
Yes.
we're not saying to downplay the others, it's to include everybody.
Include everybody. It affects women and girls as much as it affects men and boys.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about the 7-year-old, I think she was 7, who was killed on the couch of her
Right.
grandmother, as much as we're talking about human rights. So can we, and again, like you said, it's not about saying there just didn't matter in comparison to Black women. It is saying, well, what about everyone who's being killed in this way? Even Black trans women.
Yes.
Can we talk about that conversation about the killing of trans people?
Mm-hmm. So, and so if going back to the episode, this isn't the first time that D has been made invisible.
Right.
Pretty much been, uh, um, and not knowingly made invisible in previous episodes beforehand. So we're seeing kind of like this erasure of D from the adults, because they're distracted by their own problems. And and that's human nature, but at the same time, like, D is a part of this also. And so we can't forget that she does exist, and because otherwise it's too late, or it gets to be too late when you do realize, when it's like, oh, wait a minute.
Oh, yeah, we do have a child here. Heidi, like for example, when George called home that time, he was like, "Thank you for telling me a story. Where's your mom?"
Yeah.
Dismissed her. Like, well, she was actually telling you your future, but no worries. And
Mm-hmm.
then at the beginning of the I Am episode, when she was in the car,
Right.
like, stay in the car. What?
Right. And when she's like, I don't think we're supposed to be here.
Exactly. She has been the voice of reason, and people are like, but you're a child, stay in child's place. Now, we do understand that sometimes we want children to play and have fun, but they are privy to the same word that you are privy to.
Mm-hmm.
So communication is key. We are dealing with so many things, not only in 1950s, but in 2021, that children are being confronted with day to day, and we can't pretend they don't see it.
Exactly.
We can always speak to our past and be like, we remember this. No one ever talked to us about it, but we knew what was going on. So we can't keep pretending that they don't have feelings, that they don't have perspectives, and seeing the same thing. And that's what D had been dealing with throughout this show. Now it's like, y'all, seriously, just pay attention to D, because y'all doing too much.
We do see, so we won't say that all of them totally just disregarded it. Montrose does, he is kind of like that person that does realize, like, she's not here, so let me go see where I can find her. So, because it's one thing to say D is missing, and we're like, okay, she's missing, but it's another to say D is missing, let me go find her.
Right, right.
Where did she go? That's a whole nother, that's another step that that happened.
It really is. And
Yeah.
he actually, okay, so even before he found her, everyone was like, D, where are you? Oh, got distracted by life. Yep. Like, let you look for D. And why would you go home looking for her? I don't think she used to play at your house. No. And so, I mean, that one time, but she went home and then she got sidetracked with Gia. Right. And that whole situation, Atticus got sidetracked, rightly so. Rightly so.
So not only is, our Black children being silenced by their family and close friends, but we see it happening in society. So, and this is what we already know. So if nothing else, we know that society silences Black girls, and in a specific case with D comes from good old Captain Lancaster. Finding, because her comic book gets left in Kansas, and they find it and they track her down, and she's in this alley and she's trapped, and we see like, oh, what's about to happen here? And he casts a spell on her.
Yes.
And this spell, it's a doozy.
It really is. And it was to prevent her from speaking out on her trauma, on what she encountered.
So she was already silenced, literally.
She was.
Now it's like, oh, you definitely not going to be able to talk to nobody.
Because even when she tried to talk to Letty at one point, she was, okay, let's go back to, first of all, what does the spell do?
Yeah. So the spell, this nasty spell, I just want to make note of that. This nasty spell that he spits on her.
Even then, do you know how derogatory and bad that is for someone to spit on you? If they spit on you, that is disgraceful. That is degrading. And that is the way in which he gets her attention or casts a spell. He don't just, oh, spell is cast. He literally spits on her as though she's nothing. Ew, it's nasty too. I had to from that part.
Yeah. So we see how this spell has been cast, and that anything that from here on forward, going forward, you know, she can't speak it, can't tell anybody what she sees. So now whatever she sees, you know, it's people gonna be looking at her crazy when she say, "Don't you see that?" Because it actually happens. She asks them, like, "You see them?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?"
Like, no, I don't see anything. But that they were haunting her. Bopsy, Topsy, and Bopsy.
Seeing Topsy. If y'all remember from Uncle Tom's Cabin, you know, and this is a very new revised version of Bopsy and Topsy, a scary revised version. Whoever that makeup artist was, yeah, they got me. Because
that will keep you up maybe an extra 30 minutes at night. That may have you thinking a minute. You might want to watch a fun show. But it really speaks to, again, it's like, this is what racism is, monsters. It's like, you know, these girls, Bopsy and Topsy, they're scary because, like, we're coming to get you. You're going to be like us.
Yeah. So you see, this is the aftermath of the spell. So you got these two spirits, Topsy and Bopsy, you know, who are representations of a distorted character, Black youth. So they embody the hate of the world around them, and they become this extension of anti-Blackness. And that this is, you know, these are essentially people there, these spirits are following her, trying to get her, trying to take her away, trying to take her life, end her life. And, you know, imagine that literally following you everywhere you go.
Right. And the thing is, no one's seeing it because you're a child. It's like, as a child, no people don't think that race. I mean, now I think in the media you may have more conversations on it, but youth experience racism as well in their classrooms, in their friend circles, in so many different layers. But no one sees it because, like, you don't get it. You're just a little child.
You don't know.
You don't know any better. And she said, "Look at they're behind you, Letty. You found me. First of all, can you give me a hug?" But Letty was distracted by other things. Not we understand the things she was distracted by. But Dee was like, "You were literally actively looking for me in your house. I am here. Go inside." And then when she was like, "Get some water," because she was choking. She was like, "I'm trying to tell you," but that was part of the silencing spell. Because in the book, it was actually Horace.
Exactly right.
Because, you know, Dee was a man and a boy in the book, and the spell was to, again, if you try to say something, you'll start choking. And she did. Lady was like, "Get some water. I gotta go. I can't be bothered with you right now."
Yeah. And like, once again, so you see her life is, you know, inches away from being taken, but you just wanted to go get some water. And, you know, that is what racism is, always inches away from taking someone's life.
Always inches away. Always, because she always gets so close to them and she's able to escape. But in the end, we'll talk about how it does claim her to some degree, but she gets so close. And it really speaks to, even after she realized who this thing was, because she went to speak to Captain Lancaster. "What did you do to me?" And he explained to her everything. She's like, "Okay, I'm gonna take control of everything. Let me try to own this."
Oh, we also forgot to mention when they put the spell on her, when he asked her, what the other cop asked her is, you know,
the name.
The name Hippolyta. What kind of name is that? And you know, when Dee comes back to the precinct,
yes,
you know, because she ain't forget, like, okay, you're gonna talk about my mama's name? Okay, I'm gonna remember that. I got you. So she get to the precinct, she telling, you know, call the man a pig, you know, what did you do to me? Like, she taking her narrative. He taking her,
owns this.
Tell me. And then after, you know, she did all that out. And it's Greek. I was like, oh, thank you. Thank
you. It's a Greek name.
Let him know. You're not gonna just say my mama name and just act like it's nothing.
Right.
Like, I didn't forget what you said about my mama.
Exactly. And it speaks on the importance of names. Goes back to even the previous episode of I Am Hippolyta. And then someone saying, "Who is this Hippolyta person? Like, what's that? What type of name is that?" The way people dismiss Black names. like, you know, my name is, you know, Kaniqua. I get it a lot. Like, oh, you know, you either get it unique or you may get it. Can I call you something else?
No, you cannot.
It's like
And
I
I
see
get
value.
that when like that, how offensive that even that question can be. Can I call you something else? Can I call you something else?
Right. Can I call you trash can? It's easier for me to get by. So
So
even that, the fact that our names and Uzo spoke about, I think it was on the show, and how she was like, we can say Schwarzenegger, why can't we say her name?
yeah,
And people choose to get your name right depending on who you are. And
yeah,
of course, race is a factor. We tend to diminish black names,
hmm,
even though Hippolyta is Greek,
yeah. But
but it was uncomfortable.
it's attached to a black woman. So yeah.
That's still black women.
Yep.
So yeah. And one thing I will say, even growing up, it took me a minute to grow into my name and loving my name.
Mhm.
I had to be like, oh, Kanika really is a great name. It has a rhythm to it. You know, it's a beautiful. It's part of my culture. You know, it is my culture. My name is my culture. And so yeah, it really speaks to that. Put respect on Hippolyta's name and our names.
Exactly. So now what what does happen, so we see, Dee is trying to take back what's happening. She's trying to figure it out. She's trying to get these questions answered. As she's leaving the station, we hear Naomi Wilder's speech from the March on Our Lives rally in 2018 playing in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And we see how she's preparing to trap Topsy and Bopsy.
Yes.
While she's doing that, she does something that, watching it another time again, it clicked. I was like, she realizes that she can't talk, so she's gonna draw. So she
Yes.
draws the pictures, draws pictures of Topsy and Bopsy, so that when she is able to speak, or whenever the time comes, she can show evidence. Like, I got this evidence here.
Yes.
And I said, that is the creativity of Black girls, Black people, that we're not gonna just settle for not being able to talk. We're not
Right.
gonna settle for like, okay, that's it. I don't have any more options. She thought quick off the head, was like, you know what? I'm gonna draw these pictures. And she drew several of them, had
Yes.
multiple pictures.
Just drawing out. She was drawing fast, like, because she knew they were coming. She was just drawing them. And it really speaks to how Black people have creatively over time used our gifts to really speak against oppression, or to speak of oppression and against. And
Exactly.
you know how we had photographers who would take pictures of all these issues going on. That was their work. That was how they spoke against oppression. You had artists, you had poets, you had so many different people. And to see Dee do that, and that as her work of, I'm telling y'all what's going on. I may not be able to go out and tell you because clearly I'm stifled and I'm a child, but let me draw this for you.
It's like, once again, you're going to hear me, maybe not literally hear me, but you're going to hear me through these pictures, through
Yeah.
this, through this pencil, through this art. You're going to hear me, you're going to see me, and I'm going to be heard, I'm going to be
Yeah.
recognized. So
And then even when they catch her, you see Montrose come back. Because you know, Montrose, this queer character who has been, in the beginning, he was, you know, this alcoholic. Then we found out he was queer and he was pushed to the outskirts. He was outcasted by everyone.
yep,
And he was able to see both times, at the beginning and in the end, he saw that she's struggling with something. He could not see Bopsy and Topsy, but he knew he actually saved her. Because I think in that one scene, one of the twins, one of the character, Bopsy or Topsy, they were upset because they couldn't get to her. That's why only one of her arms were being scarred,
yes,
because she was sitting there like, I can't get to her because Montrose came. He's, you know, they don't speak, but that's what it was. But it speaks to, again, how you have your positionality affects what you see.
right, right,
And we see how he, as this outcast, and how he's doing his own demons, he was able to see from this disenfranchised perspective, or this disempowered perspective of, okay, I see you, D, what's going on? He knew where to find her. He didn't see a roadmap or nothing. He just went, and you can tell that at the end of the episode, even though there was a lot going on, he still knew we still gotta get D back. Like, what are we doing?
like, in the end, like, that's still my niece. I still need to make sure that she's protected. I still
Right,
make sure that she's alive. I still
right.
save her, even when early on she did cuss him out, you know.
But, you know, we also gotta give some type of liberty. Now that messed me up. I'm be honest with you, because it's like your mom didn't raise you like that, nor did your dad. So I don't know why you did that. But you know, we also have to give her some latitude
You
where
agree?
it's like, she's grieving, but I don't know because something clicked in my trust for a minute too.
Yeah.
So like, who are you talking to like that? Look, I know we're going through some things, but and one thing he said, I don't know if we mentioned it earlier, how it was like they're always trying to take something from you, but don't give it away easily.
And if you do, you better make them fight for it.
You make them fight for it, and I think that's what she did in this whole episode.
Yeah.
She did not succumb to Topsy and Bopsy. She gave them a fight.
Exactly.
Even into the end.
All the way to the end. All the way to the end. So
yes.
Once again, Black women, Black girls, they you got to listen to them.
Yes.
As we've said before, we try to tell you. We try to tell you.
You really did.
You need to hear me because we got something to say. And like I said, these 2 episodes have been waiting to talk about, because of who we are as Black women. Yes. We were once Black girls, so we've grown up. We've become these Black women who are making strides, who are succeeding, who are thriving, being successful. We are making our voices heard. We are sharing our narratives. We are telling the stories.
Yes.
Maybe others are not able to tell. So
exactly.
Yeah. And like episode 7, there was some other stuff that was transpiring in the episode too. As we said, everybody else was still continuing with their life, even though Dee was struggling and trying to survive and stay alive.
Why? How can we not care about the kids? Letty's pregnant. She's upset because Gia come back and Gia's like, "Hi, Tick." They're both sitting at a dinner table when Tick comes in the house, like, and Gia was like, "Hi." Like, Letty was like, she wasn't even looking at Tick. She did not look at Tick. And so we had to reconcile that was going on. Then the conversation on trust with Christina. Should we trust her?
Right. No, the answer is no. There should be no trust from nobody. Literally is thinking about it. Tick is literally thinking about it. Ruby is literally thinking about it. Like each of them are trying to figure out, like, how we gonna be able to? Can we trust Christina? Like, I need Christina. Like, do you really need it though?
You really need her. Stop trusting her. I don't get it. So. And another interesting point in Christina, because you had Ruby and Christina having this interplay where Ruby was like, "Do you care? Do you understand what's going on? Does it matter to you?" And Christina said, "I don't care." And then she even threw it back at Ruby. "Do you even care?
Because you're here on the north side."
First of all, you still don't know what D is. If I was Christina, I would have said that. I'm like, "Well, where's D though?" But Christina doesn't think on that level. And Christina actually pays 2 white men to beat her up or treat her like Emmett Till or Bobo. So she went through the beating, she was shot, and she had barbed wire around her neck and things like that, and thrown into the river. And it was very interesting, I will say, seeing it being depicted on a white woman. Mm-hmm. And it brings up interesting conversation, like, what if it happened to a white woman? What would that could that have ever happened to a white woman in that way?
And at the same time, you don't get a cookie though.
You do not
for that.
Like, no,
sorry, like because for me, my question is like, so what are you doing this for? What are you trying to benefit here? Because if you're trying to understand the struggle, we can have a dialogue conversation.
Yes,
we can discuss this, and this doesn't make you a better person,
right? Because you have to go through it to empathize.
Like because you're going to come back. You're not dying. So what does that do for you experiencing it?
You're performing it.
You're really performing it because she's really not experiencing it.
Right. She's just performing it. And it's like, again, do you have to go through to empathize with the plight of Black people at this point? Like, why do you have to experience the death to understand why Ruby was emotional about the death?
Exactly. And we also have the eternal equinox, which will, become much more clear later on. we're also seeing Letty, religion is coming back again, kind of like a rediscovering of her faith. This is due to, some other things, the fact that she's pregnant, the fact that Gia comes into the picture, there's kind of like this rediscovery of what's happening spiritually due
Yes.
to something else that happens.
Yes.
There are hard conversations
Yeah.
that Christina and Ruby have, even in the tense that it is. The conversations are some uncomfortable truths, some hard dialogue that has to that transpires. So.
Yes. And between Tick and Montrose.
Yeah.
Now that conversation was necessary.
Very
now
much.
We already know that Atticus is still going through his issues with Montrose. That's fine. Well, it's not fine, but now this was a moment where Montrose could really explain why he did what he did.
Yeah.
And he talks about a pastor who, I think the pastor was gay.
Yes.
And they removed him from the church and put him in an asylum. And he put him in like a lobotomy.
Yeah, they found him with another man. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And they took him out. He was in an asylum, and he said, "I didn't want to be in an asylum. I didn't want to die.
And
I
that's
didn't want to be
a
here."
powerful moment.
Yes.
And makes you, and should make you understand him a little bit more when he says, "I chose life over an asylum."
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that he had to choose that,
right,
is what makes it really sad, because he couldn't choose to be who he was.
No.
In that choosing of life, he still had to hide.
Yes.
That was the way so that he didn't, as he said, the pastor or priest had half of his brain cut out. So
right.
For him, it's like, if that's what's going to happen, if I say that who I really am, I'll just live life. I'll struggle. I'll go whatever it is that I got to go through, but I'm not going through that. And
right.
The sacrifices that people have to make to just survive.
Even today,
it's so much more than surviving. It's thriving. Like
right.
I talk on that so much. Like I don't want to just survive. I don't want just that.
Right.
I want more than that.
You want more than that. And when you speak of Montrose, even that conversation, life, and he couldn't thrive because he kept this secret. He hid who he was because he was always afraid. So him becoming an alcoholic, all these different things, and even now we do have to deal with abuse in the Black community, how he would beat Atticus because he didn't want Atticus to feel soft. Right. But all this is a part of having to hide who you are. And it's really, like you said, it's important that we thrive and also be ourselves and be able to be ourselves. So we have to challenge society and how society really puts these confinements around or confines certain groups of people. And we see what can happen and what happened with Montrose.
And that we shouldn't be made to feel guilty for self-preservation.
Right. Right.
You shouldn't have to feel guilty about that. If anything, you should be encouraged. We're always talking about self-care, self-preservation too.
It's key.
It really is. So, and we also see another nod to the actual book. I remember both of us were actually reading the book, and alongside as we were watching the show live every Sunday, and how it really connected in many ways. There was definitely some changes in others, but there was definitely a very connection to see them actually recognize the book, like Matt Harper's book, and be like, yeah, in the book though, D is Horace and George is still alive, and we were just like, yes, that happened in the book. Yes,
it really is in the book. Yes, and it's actually, the book was because he went to the future.
Yeah,
and the book was written by his son,
George Freeman.
Yes.
Yes. And then they share a moment of Tick and Montrose share a moment of casting this spell, and they this is where he also learns that his father is dyslexic, and Tick makes him like, you got any more secrets? Because you can see there's like, okay, as I'm learning more about you, I feel like I'm getting somewhere. So you got anything else you need to tell? You need to tell me.
Exactly. When you brought up dyslexic, it really, that was another thing. It's like, I wonder how that impacted him in his life being dyslexic and how people viewed him as dyslexic. But he loved to read. So he really shows like, I can be dyslexic and still be able to live my life. But it was funny because he was like, "Are there any more secrets that you want?" Like he was like, "Let's just go on with the spell."
So they do the spell, and in that moment, nothing happens.
That messed Montrose up.
They messed him up because it was like I had this bonding moment with my son, and nothing happened. And you even I feel for both of them because you're like you wanted it to work.
Yes, he was willing to sacrifice himself for his son.
Yeah,
Like
he says that he was like, "I'm gonna do everything that I got to do to make sure I protect my son and to protect my grandson." Like he's like, not just you, but the future too. So, and so in the end, we see kind of like I don't know how we should describe it, but it was an amazing event.
it was an amazing event. It was we see her ups and downs, and mainly her downs, her invisibility and her silencing. And but we also see Montrose really standing in his truth.
Yep.
We see him finally standing in his truth. And then by standing in his truth, Tick is finally able to, okay, let's talk through this. Let's go through this. Because it's no longer a secret.
Nope.
So yeah.
So we get there, we get back to Letty's house. Ruby's there, Letty's there, a lot of other friends are there, and we hear gunshots. The police is out there.
Yes, they are.
The police start shooting up the place. This is when we find out that Letty is invulnerable. So she kind of sits up at a moment, and bullets are just flying and bouncing off for you. Like, oh yes, superhero stuff right here. And then you see the scene switches to where we see Tick walking to the house, and he's kind of like, oh, what's going down? Like, what just happened here?
Or and he's walking in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
Why would he do that?
And in that moment, like every other police officer does, unfortunately, in that situation during that time, they saw this black man and felt threatened, and now the guns are aimed at him.
Mm-hmm.
And you see Letty peep through the window, and then it's like, oh no, and she's like running out, and the gun goes off, and it's slow motion.
The actor's like, no.
And then out of nowhere, because I didn't see it coming, they didn't see it coming.
I don't think the ground was shaking.
Yeah. It was like this creature, what we would learn to be called a black shoggoth, emerges out of the road. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh snap.
I was like, oh, we gonna kill y'all. Because we still on.
They were in the very first episode and they have returned. But this time, not necessarily against Tick and them. So we see that Shoggoth, he wreaks havoc. He's like, I'm going boom, 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 boom. Takes everybody out. And then, Tick finally gets a moment where he can run to the front porch, and then you see where everything is kind of like going towards them, and Letty is, trying to protect him. She's trying to protect her.
Yeah.
Shoggoth comes, and it's like this moment where he stretches his arm out, and then you're like, oh, what's about to happen? Like, is he gonna take him out? What's he gonna do? And then he just like is calm, and you're like,
up there was like,
and it's like it worked. The spell worked, and then it just ends.
You're like, okay, well, enjoy the day. I hope everything works out. Like, but it was amazing. It's almost, again, it's like a reformed racist.
Yeah.
Like an ally. It's like, did you just create an ally?
Like I did. Uh-oh. And so this monster that had been described as racism, segregation, everything, now was a protector.
Yes.
So I said, this was a lot. There was a lot. We couldn't shortchange it. Had to make sure we gave you those details. I enjoyed talking about this as always, but this one, it hit the core. It hit the core for me.
It was deep. It was like, wow, this show sees us.
Yeah, it does. It does.
It sees every aspect of us, the complexity of us. It sees all these things. It sees us. And so we had to dedicate time to really talk about the different themes that are going on. So I just want to say, as we go toward our end, as we conclude, I want to thank you so much for tuning in for Conversations with Beloved and Kindred. And I hope you stay tuned because next time we're going to discuss Fast Colors, which is a 2018 film. And we're going to really talk about it.
We're continuing, Black women and future and fantasy and the imagination. So we're not done just yet with the Black woman. Not at all.
We will never be done with the Black woman, just FYI.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So till the next time, remember the past is a living thing, the present prepares for us, and the future is ours. We'll see you next time.